And good evening. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show. I'm your host and facilitator, Mark Wallace. It is good to be back with you again. We have so much that we have to cover tonight, so we're going to get right into it. And I want you all to make sure that you call into the program because this is, remember, that we cannot sit on the sidelines. We don't have time for despair. And this is not a spectator sport. You and everyone that you know has got to be engaged in this process. All right. So thank you all for tuning in to the broadcast. Please share this. Go onto my YouTube page at Mark Wallace, The People Show, and register there. There is no subscription cost or anything like that. Just register there at the YouTube page, and please share that with other people in your social network and ask them to come on to the program. So I want to thank you all for being here for this Monday night edition of the People Show. We got a lot to cover tonight, and so I want to get started. There is a story that hit the news last week. We got a whole bunch to talk about, but there's a story that hit the news last week about Raymond Lopez, who is an alderman of the city of Chicago, and he has proposed and is sponsoring legislation that will prevent furriers. I think that there's 8 furriers here in the city of Chicago. One of them, Black, Andriana Furriers, is a Black-owned furrier. He's been in business for more than 30 years. And there is a bill, or I should say an ordinance, that Raymond Lopez is the sponsor of. And the bill is to stop furriers from selling original furs. Now, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I'm going to be curious as to how you feel about it. But I want you to engage in the conversation about it. Now, again, I think there are somewhere either 5 or 8 furriers in the city of Chicago. One of the furriers is Andriana Furs on the south side of Chicago, which is a Black-owned furrier. He's been in business, like I said, for more than 30 years. And this bill or this ordinance that's being sponsored by Raymond Lopez to prevent furriers from selling real furs. Now, let me say this. In full disclosure, I do not support furriers. I don't support the way that the animals are treated and tortured. I don't believe in it. So I don't and have never bought a mink, not for my wife, not for a girlfriend or anybody, not even for myself. So I just refuse to buy them. Now, I don't think that I would be on the side of putting someone's business in jeopardy. I don't think that I would be on that side. I certainly would want to have a conversation with the in particular the Black business owner, because he's the only one. He's been in business for more than 30 years. And of course, people would say, well, wait a minute, you wear leather coats or you wear leather shoes or this or that or the other, and those come from animals. And that's very true. That's very true. And I'm going to ask you all to please forgive me because I have, for some reason, just about an hour ago, my sinuses have started to act up. So I'm going to do my best not to honk while I am on air, but I am having a little bit of a challenge tonight. All right. So, but at any rate, these furriers are faced with this ordinance that Raymond Lopez is proposing for the city, and it comes up for a vote. I'm not sure that when it actually comes up for a vote, but giving all of the issues that we have, is this one of the issues, or certainly is this an issue that we should be investing a lot of our legislative time on passing this ordinance? Now, look, you can call your alderperson, and I am going to attempt to put their numbers in the chat, and you will be able to talk with your alder people. And then what you should do is contact your alderperson. Now, if you don't know your alderperson's number, you can contact your alderperson if you live. Now, we largely live in 20 wards, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 20th, 21, 24, 27, and I want to dare say the 35th and the 37th ward. Yeah, that is missing. So contact your alderperson, and really tell your alderperson that any black alderperson, alderwoman, or alderman that vote for this ordinance is voting to put the one black fur company that's been in business for more than 30 years, to put them out of business, because they will not be able to sell the furs that people that wear furs buy, which cost 5, 10, 15, 20,000, or maybe even more than that, from the synthetic furs that they will end up having to sell, obviously sell for a lot less. Not sure what market that they would have for that, but they claim that this would be detrimental to them. And as a person, again, who do not support furs, and only for the same reason, for the reasons where that they treat the animals, and they treat the animals poorly, I don't support furs or furriers. Now, whether I'm going to be on the side of putting furriers out of business, I don't think that in having this conversation and receiving and seeing the story that I saw last week about it towards the end of the week, and then received this email about it that I received from Del Marie today, about this, asking people to call your alderperson. So as I said, I'm going to try to see if I can put the information up that where you can call your alderperson. I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm going to see if I can put it in the chat. So just if you don't have your alderperson's number, if you don't know what your ward is, that I'm going to put it in the chat so that you'll have the number, and you can call your alderperson, and you can determine or speak to them about supporting or not supporting this this ordinance. So, but it's certainly something that we should be engaged in. But let me tell you, there's a lot of reasons why we have to be more politically engaged in what is going on, because our communities and liberties, for that matter, are under attack. So, which is why it is important for us to make sure that we stay engaged in the process. So I'm going to put the alderman's information in the chat so that people will be, as they come on, if you don't know your alderman's number, then I think that hopefully I got it in here. The telephone numbers, let's see. No, that's not it. Let's see. Hang on just one second. No, that's not it. So I have to, I'll get the numbers, but I'll share them with you. I'll share them with you so that you can have that information. But anyway, so the issue is that he wants to pass this ordinance, and the ordinance is about banning existing furriers, not putting them out of business, but banning them from selling new furs. So if they have current furs, real furs, they will be able to sell, but they will not be able to ban new furs. So they're going to vote on this ordinance. The ordinance won't go into effect for 1 year. So they're saying that they're giving the businesses an opportunity 1 year for them to adjust, or certainly to prepare themselves to sell the synthetic furs, or to change their merchandising to something else other than real furs, that they will not be able to sell real furs. What do you think about that? 951-221-8221 is the number. 951-221-8221 is the number, is the call-in number that you can call in and to express how you feel about that and what you think about that. Is this a bill, or is this an ordinance that our older people should be spending time on? Passing an ordinance that will preclude business from selling real furs. What is your position? I told you what my position is. My position is that I don't agree with the way that the animals are treated, the way that the animals are tortured in order to get their skins to make these furs. People will say, well, Mark, you wear leather coats or you wear leather shoes. I don't wear leather pants. You wear leather shoes. So what is the difference in somebody wearing a fur? Well, I think the difference is that what I stated is that there's no evidence of torture of animals that they are creating leather. I'm not saying that that does not happen. I'm not in defending that it happens. I'm just simply stating what my position is on this. Would I be on the side of passing a ordinance or supporting an ordinance that will prevent someone from marketing a product, despite what my personal feelings are about how those products, how they get their materials? I won't be on the side of telling someone that they cannot do business that is legal unless somehow it was some sort of federal mandate that outlawed people doing business. In particular, in our community, when Black businesses are already challenged, and we certainly have lost a number of Black businesses over the past 3 decades here in the city of Chicago. And this will certainly put a serious issue on the this one Black business here in the city of Chicago, Andriana Furs. And I, will probably reach out to them, and maybe we can get them to come on the program at some point to talk more about this. Like I said, I am transparent about my personal thoughts about fur and the selling of furs for the reasons of how the animals are treated. Like I said, I've never bought one. I won't buy one. In fact, I think my wife has a fur, but I didn't buy it. She bought that long before we were married. But would I go so far as to support an ordinance that is going to prevent people from doing business? I don't think that I will be on that side. So ask you to call your alderman. If you live in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 20th, 21st, 24th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 37th ward, contact your alder person. And if Pat Dow is your alderman, or Lamont Robinson, Desmond Yancey, William Hall, Greg Mitchell, Michelle Harris, Anthony Beal, Stephanie Coleman, David Moore, Derek Curtis, Jeanette Taylor, Ronnie Mosley, Monique Scott, Walter Burnett, Jason Irving, Chris Teleferro, or Emma Mitz. Or there's another older person who is not on it, but she's on the north side, but I think she should be called as well. Maria Haddon is not on this list. There's 2 others that I think that are missing from the list. But if any one of these are your aldermen, call them and express your concern about them supporting an ordinance that Raymond Lopez. Now, many of these aldermen might support Raymond Lopez purely because he supported them on ordinances that they have brought forth. But that's not how they should be governing. You should be governing based on what is right or what is wrong, what is best or what isn't. That's how you should be making your decision, not based on whether somebody has supported several bills or ordinances that you wanted or measures that you wanted. It should be based on whether it is the right thing to do or not. That's what it should be based on, not on how popular it is, or that this person supported or didn't support something that you wanted to be supported. All right, so give that some thought. Now, the DOG-E, and Donald Dump, the criminal thug and thief that occupies 1600 Pennsylvania. I am never going to refer to him as the capacity in the presidency. He occupies it, but I'm never going to refer to him that. This is a criminally convicted person who 77 million voters decided that they want, and it is seeming that many of them are having buyer's remorse. And I don't know why they're having buyer's remorse, because that's what he told you he was going to do. We tried to warn you that it is in that 922-page manifesto that they are working very hard to inflict that pain on Americans, Black, white, Hispanic, whatever, every day, who is not inside their ether. They are working to inflict that pain. So they are now trying to, and Social Security is a part of that. Now they keep talking about the DOG-E-LON Muskrat keeps talking about Social Security as Social Security being a Ponzi scheme. Let me tell you that Social Security is the one functioning agency within the government that is solvent. Why is it solvent? Is because you pay into that through your payroll taxes. By law, it can't even be included in the budget. It is self-funding source. It is the one agency, the one fund that is solvent. It's not money that is appropriated through sales taxes or through taxes. You pay into it, and working people pay into it. There's $2.7 trillion in that fund that they are trying to destroy so that they can privatize it and sell it off to their wealthy cronies. They're doing their very best to demoralize the system, to cripple the system by offering employees a $25,000 bailout. Now, let me tell you why that in and of itself is not going to work. And that in and of itself is a scam, because the president has to go to Congress. He has to go to Congress. That means he has to get a consensus, that he has to get members of Congress of both houses, in the Senate where there's 100, and in the House where there's 435 members, that he has to get those two entities to consent or to get a consensus, and they're going to have debate, and he's going to have to wheel support for the measures for him to appropriate the funds to even if in fact people wanted to take them up on that, to appropriate the funds to do that in Congress. It can't be done by executive order. Congress, by the Constitution, holds the purse, and they are responsible for appropriating the funds. So he has to go through Congress. He has to speak to the members of the Senate. He has to speak to members and negotiate with members of the House. He does not want to do that. He's not interested in governing. He doesn't even care about governing. All they care about is blowing things up because they don't even understand it. Even though they're there, they do not understand it. Elon Muskrat does not understand the process of governing. And in my never to be humble opinion about this ingrate, that he does not care about our governmental system. He doesn't. He is a South African who supported apartheid. So who came out of that system and still believes in that system, where you have 7% of the population of South Africa as white, and they control more than 70% of all of the land in South Africa. Elon Musk is not interested in governing. Elon Musk does not understand governing. And Elon Musk is operating illegally. The president is operating illegally because he has set up another form of an agency without going through Congress. That's the Constitution. So he is not constitutionally sound in operating and functioning in this group they call DOGE, which I call DOG-E. So they're not even operating within the Constitution, which means that they're violating the law. But who's going to hold them accountable? Because the Supreme Court has given them the white flag of immunity, because he would consider this to be an official act. So he can't be held accountable, even though we know that what he is doing is outside of the Constitution. So again, Social Security is not bankrupt. Social Security is not going bankrupt. As long as you have workers and you have people paying into Social Security, it's not going bankrupt. That is nothing but a fear tactic, because fear sells. Fear motivates people. Fear gets people's attention more than the truth. A lie would crowd a room of people around to hear a lie much faster than it would fill a room for people to hear about the truth. The same about getting people engaged. To try to get people engaged with things that are going to really impact their lives is very difficult to do. But if you want to get people engaged to go to a concert, to go to a restaurant, to go to a party, very easy to do, to fill up a room. None of which is going to improve the quality of one's life. It will entertain you for a few minutes, but it's not going to improve the longevity of your existence. But that's just the reality. That's where we are now. So that's what they're selling in all of these measures that they're taking, is that they're selling fear. Social Security is the most solvent, functioning agency within the government because it is not funds that are appropriated through taxes. It is funds that you pay into that has a $2.7 trillion coffer. $2.7 trillion. And they want to get their hands on it. They've been trying to get their hands on it so that they can give it to their cronies to amass more power. Now, is this just about wealth? I don't believe that this is just about wealth. I believe that this is more about power and control as well as about wealth. But it's certainly about power and control. Now, we can surmise a lot of different reasons, but they all go back to and are inextricably tied to power and control. And so the only way to fight power and to fight against it is that you have to build power. And I want to talk more about that later, but I want to certainly get through these things that we want to talk about. Now, the stock market has tumbled. The stock market has taken this a serious tumble today. I think it closed at 900 points down, about 2%. So over the last 3 days, there have been some serious losses at the stock market. And then when he was asked about it, he sort of shrugged it off and said that you can't really determine things based on the stock market, which we all know that is true, except for the stock market that he now wants to turn away from, which was one of his favorite metrics. Now, all of a sudden, he is saying, no, you can't pay attention to the stock market. You can't really use the stock market as measure, when in fact that's all he reverted to, which is true. You cannot necessarily use the stock market as the measure of what's happening in the economy. So the Dow closed at about 900 points today, losing about 2% of its gains. And this was a third or fourth day that the Dow has closed down by hundreds of points, merely because of Donald Trump, of either what he says or what he didn't say about these tariffs, because he doesn't understand them. He is clueless about what these tariffs are. It is a tax on the consumer. It is not a tax on the country that they're coming from. But that is what he's selling to a public, to a base of people that he knows that will not ever do the research or will not believe anything that anybody else says that doesn't come out of MAGA. He knows that he has this cult of people. Now, that cult of people is shrinking. Imagine this. You are a senior, or you have a senior member of your family. It could be your mother, your father, your aunt, your uncle, your grandmother, your grandfather, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, some senior, all of us have in our families. And they absolutely rely on those Social Security benefits in order to live. In order to live. And we have, the statistic shows that more than 30,000 seniors die needlessly because they could not get the benefits that they needed to get so that they could have the care that they need to get. They can get the support in order for them to survive and to live. But we have these people who are not constitutionally authorized to engage in the practice that they're engaging in. But yet you have some people who think that what they're doing is okay. Now, for those of you who voted for this, who voted for these evil people because of your political ignorance, because that's all that is, not because you are not intelligent. See, being an intelligent person and being a politically astute person are two very different things. I know many people who are light years more intelligent than I could ever dream of being. They are grossly, grossly politically ignorant because they don't participate. They don't really understand. They understand that voting is a responsibility. You go and vote, but they don't understand how government actually works. They don't understand how decisions actually impact people's lives. They don't understand that policies that are passed today are not policies that immediately impact the people today, or may not be policies that immediately impact over the next several years. It takes sometimes decades for us to understand how a policy actually was a benefit or it was a liability. Because then we have historical data and data to analyze to see what kind of impact that particular policy had. So all of these thousands of people, more than 100,000 people have been terminated from their jobs. Just let go from their job. Those are bureaucratic people who are career civil servants who do work that serve the general public, that provides the services that we need within the general public, from poor people to the disabled, to the developmentally challenged, to seniors, all across the board. These people are investing their time in their careers. They chose this path, not because the government is a sound place to get a job, but this is a place where they have chose to serve their country. And you have people like the criminally convicted thug and thief, along with his sycophants, that are exacting this kind of carnage on people and by extension on the country. We must stand against this. And we are going to have to stand against this in droves. The 10 Democrats that voted against Al Green. I am a registered Democrat. I am going to be a registered Democrat because that is the entity, that is the party that we have been able to make progress through, albeit not perfect, not anywhere close, and we need to do things to infiltrate it so that we can make it work better, but that's what it is. However, these few people, and I forgot to load this up because I was going to put it on the screen, but I'm going to go I'm going to go through this group of people. I called every one of their offices. I called every one of their offices, and I wanted to um, I'm sorry. I wanted to contact each one of them. So I called every one of their offices and told them of my complete disdain about what they did in terms of not supporting Al Green, but siding with the Republicans to censure Al Green for standing up to Trump and his sycophants to destroy the democratic process that we have in place and the work that has been invested over the past 250 years to make our government function better. Governing is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do, but it works. And it's the system that we have. And if we don't like something about the system, then what we do is that we need to get together with people, our representatives, so that we can change the system. So that we can change those things within the system so that we make the system work better, not blow it up. And that's all what you see happening with Donald Trump. Now, the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford, is going to charge an extra 25% on electricity going to the United States as of today. That will affect 1.5 million people who are receiving electricity from Ontario, and businesses in 3 states would be affected. And he says that if the thug and thief does not back off, that they will end up shutting down the grids completely. This tells you another example that this buffoon, this evil Jim Jones buffoon of the uncertainty that he is causing throughout the world. But what this should do is send a message to every one of us that he is doing this not because he is, well, he is stupid, but not because he is ignorant, but because he has an obsession with power and dictatorship. I want you to think back to the day in his first term. I want you to think back. So I'm going to help you remember. During his first term, when Donald Trump went to visit North Korea and meet Kim Jong-un, that is when Donald Trump became obsessed with being a dictator. Donald Trump went to see Kim Jong-un in 2018, in June of 2018. And when he went to meet Kim Jong-un at the border, after he met Kim Jong-un, he came back to the States asking about a military parade for himself. That could not be done because of all of the moving parts and all of the adjustments that they would have to do to roads and electrical lines and all that sort of stuff. It was just not feasible. But he's been obsessed with it. He's been obsessed with being a dictator, a ruler. So all of what we see happening, this is not Elon Musk. This is Donald Trump and his agenda that he is allowing for Elon Musk to do. If he did not want it, if he didn't want to do these cuts, they would not happen. So these are Donald Trump's, Donald Dump's. These are his policies. These are his trusts or cuts that are going into play. And these are his decision of what other people are playing out. Don't be confused that this is anything other than that. Period. So these three states are going to suffer some great losses, or they're going to have some increased in their utility bills because of the language, just because of the language, or these threats of putting tariffs on one of our strongest countries that we do trade with. It is the dumbest thing to do. Does he know it, or does he not? Does he understand it, or does he not understand it? I contend that he doesn't care. It doesn't matter if he understands it or not. I don't know that he has the capacity to understand. I don't think that he has the character. He doesn't care because that's the only way that a person can operate this way, is that they have to not care of what's going on, because there's only one thing that matters to them, is that they can have power. He does not care about destroying anything or anybody. In fact, there's evidence of that in his business practices. And we don't need to go back through all of that. My question to you, are you going to get involved? Are you going to get involved? Now, somebody is asking me, and I believe that is Brother Rick, who is a part of our committee, and I am so excited that he and his wife are, is asking me the question if I ever considered running for public office. I have considered, yeah, I've thought about it. I've considered it. But I believe, my belief is that I believe that God puts us in the space, or certainly creates the opportunities for us to be in the space where we can make a difference and then we could have serious impact. And I believe that the space that he has us in here, I believe that if we follow and we work together and we build the infrastructure, that we could have the same significant or even greater impact as public servants, as advocates, without holding a public office. I believe that we can do that. In fact, I know that we can do that. So, yes, I've considered running for public office before, but I don't believe that anybody should be running for public office except the public calls for them to do so. Now, I know that some people will say, well, that's kind of a catch-22, because how would anybody call for you to do it if you don't step up and say that you're willing to do it? And I understand that position as well. But I believe that I am in the space where God wants for me to be, because I believe if God really wanted for me to serve in public office, that would have happened and I would have been compelled to do so. So I believe that running for public office is something that the public should compel you to do so. Now, if there was this mass calling of the public of saying that they wanted for me to run for mayor or governor, or Congress or public office, if there was this mad push from the public, I could not ignore serving the public, because that's what I do. That's what this is. That's what I'm doing here, is hopefully that I am doing something that is serving the public, that we will be able to work together so that we could cause for the advancement and the improvements of our communities wherever our people live. So that's how I view running for public. But I believe that I'm in public office right now. I believe that I'm in public office right now. I don't have a title for that, but I believe that we're in public office right now, that we have the opportunity to impact public policy. So that's my position on that. While the Muskrat is operating DOG-E, his company SpaceX is having failed rocket launch. Yes, I think that what Elon Musk should do is he should get out of the space of interfering in government and disrupting the lifeblood of this country, that he should go back to his day job and try to figure out how to not have rockets blowing up all over our skies and disrupting the movement and the operations of airlines and people getting to and fro where they need to be at. That rocket launcher that exploded shut down all of the regional airports down in Florida. I forget for how long it was, because of the debris that was, I guess, dissipating or falling from the failed rocket launch. So yeah, so that's what he's doing. He's blowing up rockets, as well as his attempt to blow up our government. I also saw a story today where there was a family person who was fired from their job. They were fired from their federal job, their federal career job, and they had family members that were cheering, literally cheering, posting on their social media page that they were excited to see this so-called waste, being done. Now, mind you, that what they again are selling fear of what they're calling getting rid of waste, and fraud and abuse. And of course, this is the new code word of waste, fraud, and abuse, so that to try and justify the actions that they're doing, when the actions that they're doing are not producing, according to the Congressional Budget Office, are not producing any significant saving whatsoever. But if they wanted to do some savings, I would say let's start with things like where we're giving $4 billion to oil companies that don't need these subsidies. We're still giving them these subsidies that we've started giving to them since the 1960s. We can stop there. We can take back giving those $4 billion a year to the oil companies. I have not heard one suggestion from DOG-E or the president about rolling back those oil subsidies. $4 billion that we give every year to the oil industry that are making record profits, but we're giving them $4 billion in assistance and subsidies every year. Why don't we start right there? Why? That's called a real savings. I bet none of you who have just heard that even knew that we've been giving them $4 billion a year to oil industry. $4 billion a year for what? Because the money was initially was giving to them to prop them up so that they could continue to provide the energy that was needed. But now they have been in the record profit plus for more than 3 decades. So why are we giving them $4 billion a year? I can only imagine why. So yeah, he should clearly get out of the rocket launching business, but he certainly should clearly get out of our government as well, destroying the lives that he's destroying. Can you imagine? Look, I have a brother who is 73 years old, and he is on disability. He suffered a stroke a couple of years ago, and he is in a rehabilitation center now. That rehabilitation center is providing much needed care to those seniors in that facility. They do a great job of taking care of them. They keep them clean, they keep them fed, and they provide all kinds of services to them. Can you imagine cutting off the funding that provides services to people who need it just so that they can live every day? These are not people who are getting money so that they can go out and just willy-nilly waste. They need those monies in order to live. And the people who provide those services to those people need those resources so that they can provide them with the care that they need. And because you have people like DOG-E and the thief, the thug and thief, who don't care about anybody outside of themselves, they don't even care about the members of their own family. If any one of the members of their families took a position against them, they would discard them as well. Because everybody is transactional and everybody is expendable to that group. So the Department of Homeland Security just announced today that they're going to be doing polygraphs. Get this, they're going to be doing polygraphs on their staff. By the way, the telephone number here is 951-221-8221 if you'd like to call in. 951-221-8221. We will certainly take your calls. 951-221-8221. The Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, just announced that they are doing polygraph tests. They are polygraphing employees for so that they can present or prevent the leaks from going out. In other words, they don't want any whistleblowers telling about the things that they are doing or getting ready to do that may not be constitutionally sound, so that they're doing polygraphs. Now, polygraph tests are not reliable. You can't use them in court because there are too many varying reasons why a person might fail a polygraph test, not because they didn't tell the truth. So polygraphs are not reliable. They're not even accepted in a court. And of course, the so-called czar for Homeland Security and doing these, remember the mass deportations that they were doing, and when they took office, they had cameras going around. Well, you know, the numbers have come out of the so-called mass deportation that this administration has done for February 2025. There were 11,000 deportations. The same period of time, 2024, there were 12,000 under the Biden administration. So I just want for people to please understand and be clear that most of what you hear coming out of this administration, including their talking pointers, their talking point heads, is not accurate information. Find a source so that you can get accurate information to help you to understand precisely what is going on, what the rules are, what the laws are, what the process is. So this idea of there being these mass deportations has already shown that the records are showing that the criminally thugging chiefs deportation numbers, there's not going to be a mass deportation. Why? Let me tell you why there's not going to be a mass deportations. The reason why there's not going to be mass deportations is, again, he's got to go to Congress to appropriate the funds needed in order for them to carry out that so-called mission or agenda. Now, they'll do a few of them to get people excited, as though to have people thinking that they're actually doing something when they're actually doing no more than former Joe Biden, former President Joe Biden. And these are the numbers. So these are people that don't want you to participate. Now, the one thing that I have to say about the Republicans is the Republicans and the MAGAs and the MAGettes, they play the long game. They play the long game. My question to you is, are you willing to get engaged to play the long game? And are you willing to get other people in your circle, in your sphere, to get them activated so that we can have the strength to resist this kind of evil? And we can resist it and we can push back on it. But you've got to have a force of power to be able to do that. And I think you know where I'm going. Now, there are some things that are coming up. This on the 14th, there are going to be in all 50 states, there's a demonstration that is happening, that's happening at all 50 capitals. And we're going there on behalf of showing up on behalf of veterans. All of us have had a family member or some family members that have served in the military. Some of us have had family members who have died on the battlefield of the military. Some of us have family members who have been injured. Some of us have family members who are suffering seriously from the mental health challenges that served in the military. So we're going to Springfield here in Illinois on the 14th. We're going down there to support the veterans, but as well as supporting the veterans, we are supporting every American against the kind of tyranny that is going on. If you're watching by way of Instagram, please go over to YouTube. We're only on for an hour on Instagram. So please go over to YouTube to Mark Wallace, The People Show, and you can get it, or you can get us on Instagram or on Facebook. We are on intellectualradio.com every Monday night and iHeartRadio from 7 o'clock until 9 p.m. So, so we're going to be down in Springfield in Illinois. So I'm calling on all those that will come and go with us, or that will drive down to Springfield to meet us there at the state capitol. And and let's be in support. We'll be in support of we'll be in support of the the veterans on Friday at Springfield. And so yeah, so we'll be down there on Friday. So we're going to talk about that on Thursday night's meeting. So if you are not a part of 10 by 10 to win, please, I'm going to put it in the chat. Please, if you're not in the text alert, please text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385. That's in the text alert, so that you can receive the text messages and the Zoom link for the Thursday night meeting that we are doing as we are building and organizing the independent Black Democratic voting bloc. We've got to build our own infrastructure so that we can infiltrate the Democratic Party here in Chicago and Cook County in the state of Illinois, so that we can make the Democratic Party be the functioning body that it needs to be. But it has to be a functioning body that is impacted by the voters, not by the party. It can't be self-governing. It can't be its own police. It has to work the way that it's supposed to work. It is government by, for, and of the people. That's you, and that is me. And so we have to put ourselves in the profound position in order that we can have the power to select, slate, and elect and unelect people who will carry out the values and to bring the resources and to bring the kinds of industries that we need to have in order for us to have a strong agrarian society in our communities on the south and west sides of Chicago, in the south suburbs where we live, in those communities that are challenged like Robbins and Harvey and Markham, and in Phoenix, and places like Inglewood, and places like the west side of Chicago, and these communities where these communities are void of critical resources, from education to economics, that can be infused, and that can be done in a much greater way by the push of the populace. And so we build our own infrastructure of an independent voting block. That block can address all of these issues, not just at the ballot box, but having the power to influence before you get to a ballot box. That's the importance. So please join us. Text 10x10 to the number 855-909-1385, or you can go to our website at 10by10 to win. That's 10x10 TOWIN.org, and you can register there. Please register there, but also get into the text alert, because the text alert, you will get all of the messages, any updates, any emergencies demonstrations that we will be participating in. You need to know about that. All right. We talked about, and I wanted to talk about this guy that is named Paul Wayridge. Do you all know Paul Wayridge? Paul Wayridge. So I'm gonna just show you. This is a man who was the founder of the conservative movement. Now, if you don't think that voting and participating in the electoral process is important, I got some clips for you that I'm going to show you tonight that many of you haven't seen. I'm going to show you some clips from Project 2025. The lead author, Russell Vought, who was the secretary of the Office of Budget and Management for Trump during his first term, is the lead author of Project 2025, who was in a meeting that he thought he was in a meeting with some wealthy Republican donors, that he happened to be in a meeting with some undercover reporters. And he is divulging exactly what they intend to do, and they are trying to do and attempting to do with Project 2025, all on tape. And so I'm going to play some of those for you tonight. But I want for you to listen to, this is a man, his name is Paul Wayridge. He was the founder of the so-called conservative movement back before Ronald Reagan. And he talks about the importance of suppressing the vote. This is why they suppress the vote. The reason why they suppress the vote is because they know that if more people participate in elections, the more that people participate in elections, the less likely it is for Republicans to get elected. Why? Because Republicans only make up about 40% of the entire electorate in the United States of America. They happen to be clustered in ruby red states where you have 900,000 people in the state, but they have 2 senators. But the conservative movement, and he was addressing a group at the Southern Baptist Convention or Council, whichever one it was, about voting. This is Paul Wayridge. I want you to listen. I may play it twice, but I want you to listen. This should motivate any of us. After seeing this and hearing this, this should motivate all of us to want to amass and make this week one of the greatest show-ups for democracy and for protecting and advancing our communities. We should not have a space in our Zoom this week if we had people to participate. Just listen to what Paul Wayward says about voting. Take a look.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
All right.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
Paul Wayward, the founder of the conservative movement, the organization of the American Legislative Exchange Commission, which we call ALEC. What ALEC is, ALEC goes around the country. They go around the country and they meet with legislators in every sector, whether it be from a school board, whether it be for a local municipality, whether it be at a state level. They meet with legislators and they have these convening meetings all around the country, and they draft legislation. They draft legislation. And then they give the legislation in these meetings. And they explain to them what the legislation is and the legislation that they want them to support. Yes, did you know that you could draft a bill? You can draft a bill. But, there has to be consensus to get that bill to the floor and consensus to get that bill passed. But you can actually draft a bill. You have that right, that constitutional privilege. But listen, so what you have here are Republicans playing the long game, because Republicans know that they are in the minority, but they act like they're in the majority. We are in the majority, but we behave like we're in the minority. And what I can assure you and what I can guarantee you is that if we did certain things like build the infrastructure of our block, if we built the block, there would be no stopping us from advancing the entrance or the interest and the policies that will enrich our communities in every sector. But the first thing that we have to do is to commit ourselves to building that infrastructure. And we have to build it large and we have to build it wide. We build it large and wide, I guarantee you that we will have the kinds of influence in every area from education to economics. In building the infrastructure, then we will have a structure. We will have an educational committee. We will have a housing committee. We will have a justice committee. We will have a mental health committee. So we will have to set up the different committees that have their chairs and they have their officers, so that all of our committees will cover all of the issues and the infrastructure of our communities. and will be able to advocate on those areas, because we have to holistically strengthen our communities. Now, I was at what was supposed to be called a town hall meeting at the St. Matthew's United Methodist Church, which is a church that a very good friend of mine, father, was the pastor of way back in the 1990s, early 2000s. He passed away, and we celebrated him there. He was also the cousin of Dr. William Lowry, or Reverend Lowry, Joseph Lowry. I'm sorry, Joseph Lowry. And so my good friend, who was a part of 10 by 10 to win, Bobby Gibson, that was his father. His father was the pastor of that church. Now, this was a town hall, a supposed town hall. This was not what I would call a town hall. This was a supposed town hall that was called by State Senator L.G. Sims. And so we went to that town hall. Wasn't really a town hall, but there was some conversation where he said that he wanted to listen. That's what a town hall is. But he really did want to listen. What they wanted to do is to put forth candidates that they want to get support for. These are candidates that they are putting forth. And he even so much as said that anybody who is interested in running for a public office, that make sure that you come to see us, because we need to know who you are in order for us to think about supporting you. That struck me kind of odd, is because it is not people who are in public office that should be determining who becomes a slated candidate. That should happen by you and I, not people who are in public office. Not to give them and celebritize them with that kind of power. I get it. I get people, they get enamored by people who are in public office, and people who may like LG Sims, and they may think LG Sims is a great state representative because he gets a little money to fix a few roads, and a couple of $1 million to do this or that or the other. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. But I said to State Senator that the Democratic Party here and the Democratic Party as a whole has a problem, because the Democratic Party's approach to issues and to addressing issues is antiquated. And they operate in these silos where he's focused on what was good for his district. Well, what's good for his district, which is the same district that I live in, is good for the district, but it is not one of the only need of every district. So you can't just be focused on, as my former pastor would say, you're just your little patch of grass. And the analysis that I use is if your grass is burning, or if your house is burning, or if your neighbor's house is burning, and you don't do something to help your neighbor extinguish the fire, your house is going to be next. My point is that we have to operate in a collective. We cannot operate in these silos and thinking that we are going to bring about the kinds of major changes that we need to have. I pointed out to him of a plan that I discovered. I didn't discover it, but a plan that I came across when I saw a 60-minute piece way back in 2015, where in the poorest region of the poorest state of the United States, Mississippi, that is the poorest state in the United States, and the poorest region within that state, in an area called Columbus, Mississippi. Columbus, Occupies, and I forget the third. It was a tri-county area. And they were suffering the loss of Ronald Reaganism, of manufacturers that have gone. They had lost more than 21 manufacturers. I'm sorry, more than 24 manufacturers over a 10-year period, which were putting people out of work. Their unemployment had skyrocketed to 20%. So the three counties got together. They stopped operating in silos. The three counties, out of desperation, got together. These were black, white, Republicans, Democrats. The three counties and the representatives of those counties got together, and they hired a headhunter to find an economic developer. And the headhunter, by the way, was based right here in Chicago, to find them an economic developer, because all three of their regions were falling into the abyss. So what they did was they hired a headhunter to find them an economic developer. The headhunter found the economic developer, and the three counties funded. They did a joint venture, and they paid for the budget of the economic developer. Once the economic developer agreed, his name is Joe Max Higgins. I've spoken with him on several occasions. Joe Max Higgins, who originally was in Arkansas, came to Mississippi, unemployment at 20%, manufacturers closing. When he got there, their largest employer, which was Sara Lee, announced that they were closing Sara Lee's, their location there, which housed or provided jobs for 2,500 people. The representatives of the three counties told Joe Max Higgins that if you could bring us a movie theater just to ignite some sort of economic development, we would consider your job to have been a success. Joe Max Higgins said, I can build a movie theater. I can get somebody to come, but who's going to go to the movie theater? You got 20% unemployment. Who's going to be able to afford to go to the movie theater? But I'll build a movie theater. Joe Max Higgins got the movie theater developed, brought in a company, got them to develop. Then what Joe Max Higgins did was he took the representatives, took them on a helicopter ride around their region. And flew them around and had all of them to look down around their region. And he asked them, what did they see? Some of them said, well, we see vacant land. Some of them said we see, some, I guess some reservoirs, whatever, some canals. Joe Max Higgins said, no, I got to change your mindset, because that's not what that is. What Joe Max Higgins says is that is opportunity. It's not just land, it's opportunity. So he took them and he said to them, look, I need monies. I need X number of dollars to build infrastructure, to build roads, to build the infrastructure. If I am going to build, and initially they said that they didn't have that money in the budget. Joe Max Higgins says, we will not use the term can't and that we don't have. Can't is not an option. Cannot do is not an option. Second place is not an option. He said that he told them that he had to get them into a different mindset, and that is a mindset of winning. And this is the point that I am making about every elected representative here. They're stuck in times that do not meet the moment that we are in right now. And I need your help so that we can rattle that cage. Now, I am not interested in anybody failing, but anybody failing, I am not interested in them being in our public representative positions. We have to have people in those positions who are willing to have a new mindset, are willing to roll up their sleeves and to work collectively, regionally, rather than just in a patch of grass that they represent, because you vote on policies that impact us all. That's what we need. But in order for us to do that, we need to have serious support and power to do it, meaning that we have to have a lot of us together as one body so that we can make the kind of demands that we need. So now, let me carry on with what Joe Max Higgins did, because some of you may not have heard this. So Joe Max Higgins got them together and finally convinced them to get and appropriate the monies that he needed to build the roads and to build the infrastructure on the land. What Joe Max Higgins did was he went out and he got an advanced manufacturing helicopter company to come that builds the helicopters for our military. He got a German truck engine building company to come, and he got an advanced steel manufacturing to come. In exchange for tax incentives, he brought them in, and by agreement, they agreed to come in, and they agreed to develop the curricular in the community colleges. So they partnered with the community colleges, the businesses, while they were building these industries. They paid for and set up the training models and infrastructure within the community colleges in the Tri-County area. Initially, there were 6,000 jobs, 6,000 positions in these three companies. And while they were building these environmentally sensitive and friendly facilities to provide these advanced manufacturing, they were training the people in these community colleges. Now, mind you, there was 20% unemployment. The average 4-person family in the Tri-County area, in the Golden Triangle, only earned anywhere between $24,000 and $32,000 a year. The average 4-person family, $32,000 a year was the highest salary earned in 2015. Joe Max Higgins brings this infrastructure in. The first graduating class that they hired, and a part of this was, the other part of the agreement is that they had to train and they had to hire from the workforce that was there. They could not import people from other states. So the first graduating class, every person earned anywhere from $65 $95,000 to $112,000 a year in the first jobs. So in the first phase of that, he brought in $6 billion, created 6,000 jobs in less than a decade. All of this happened within less than a decade. They reduced unemployment from 20% to just over the national average in less than 10 years. In less than a decade. This is in the poorest region of Mississippi, of the poorest state of the country. They were able to do this. Then they were able to continue the program, and the program became so successful that they were able to create more and invite more industry to come in, train more people to work in these industries. They now have more than $18 billion in industry, created more than 26,000 jobs. It has been so successful there in Columbus, Mississippi, that they have built their own $38 million training facility from the revenues that were generated. So it is a win-win situation. It is a win situation for the people. It is a win situation for the businesses. It is a win situation for the region because everybody is winning. They have the monies that they need to provide for their educational system, for the infrastructure, to advance their communities, to make sure they keep their roads built. And everybody who goes into that training facility, the $38 million training facility, by the time that they graduate, there's a full-time job waiting for them if they choose to take it. Now, if that can happen in the poorest region of the poorest state of Mississippi, that does not have the GDP that Chicago alone has, then we can do it here. But we have got to have people who have a different mindset. Not this mindset that LG Sims tells me is about, that he's just focused on his district. That is not a winning recipe for elevating our communities. There are 100 people in the Senate, and there are, I believe, the number of people in the House, in the state, is about I'm not sure what the number is. I'm going to look it up. But we have 10 senators, 22 state representatives, and the Speaker of the House is a black man. None of them are working in the capacity that we need to work in. And you know why that I say that? I say that is because look at what's happening in our communities. And they are not going to work. They're not going to change unless we change. We have to be, as Eddie Glaude, I have this book, we have to be the leaders that we have been looking for. That's why I say we are in the capacity, we are in the space where we have the wherewithal, if we build it, that we can make the demands and we can apply the kinds of pressure on our public representatives to deliver what we need to have delivered. There is no question about it, but it's going to be up to us. So what I am saying to everybody here, what I am saying to everybody who will listen, commit yourself to getting engaged. Number one, commit yourself to getting engaged. Number two, commit to getting others who trust you to get engaged. Join us on Thursday night at the weekly 10 by 10 to win Zoom meeting. And let's expand the tent. Let's grow the body so that we have the kinds of power to go and speak to any body of legislators, whether it be at the General Assembly, whether it be at the City Council, whether it be at a Board of Trustees, whether it be at the Cook County Board, wherever there are policies that are being drawn up, policies that are being advocated on our behalf, we have to be there. And if we want to see that change, then we've got to be that change that we want to see. There is no other way. You can't sit on the sidelines, and you can't and you can't have this apathy. In this old idea of you got to be careful. Now, let me just say this, and I say that with an asterisk, because I do realize that there are people who are working in certain jobs and you're in certain positions so that you cannot have a outward active role, but you can participate. You don't have to be on the front line. You can participate. You can show up. You don't have to even voice anything. The fact that you show up is power. It adds and strengthens the voice of our total collective. I am your representative. That's what I am. I am your representative to be able to convey what we as a collective set as an agenda and decide that the message to go forward. We function just like a union functions. And the way that a union functions is that they get information, they get an agenda, they make a decision on how they're going to approach, and then their representatives takes that agenda that they have all collaborated on and voted for, and he or she, and in this case, me, has to carry that agenda and that message forward. But no one person is a person of power. A person of power is only as strong as the number of people who are supporting them. And we must have that same discipline, that same character, that same courage, the same consciousness, the same passion for wanting to make sure that our communities are enriched and advanced. And the only way that that is going to happen is that we have to organize. We cannot continue to operate the way that we have operated. It is not the way that the opposition is operating. It is not the way that anybody who is amassing influence and strength is operating. We must build our own infrastructure of an independent block of Black voters. Now, I had a meeting the other day with some parents. And this was a multicultural group of parents, explaining to them what 10 by 10 to win is. And in fact, the member was a little concerned about someone being offended. Let me just explain and be very clear that 10 by 10 to win is not about Black people getting together to be against anybody. This is about organizing ourselves so that we can have the strength to impact the policies and to be able to engage representatives who are currently there, and to put ourselves in a position to remove people by selecting and slating people that we believe should be representing us, not some people that a party has decided that they're going to endorse and that we have to choose from that group. We make an endorsement. We make several endorsements, whether it be a school board endorsement, whether it be an aldermanic endorsement, whether it be a mayoral or a Cook County board or a Cook County board president or a governor. We have the numbers to take that power back so that it comes to the people. No state senator, no state representative, no governor, no mayor, no elected person should be determining who our candidates and representatives are going to be for us without coming to us asking us. But guess what? They don't have to now. And the reason why they don't have to now is because we are not organized yet. But when we get organized at the level that we need to be organized, then we will have and take that power back. There is no other group that is as infrastructurally organized as the capacity that we have, the opportunity, and certainly we have the resources to do. There are 660,000 registered Black voters in Chicago. There are more than 1.7 million in all of Cook County that we have, that we can build this block from. But in order to do that, we have to have a serious commitment, all of us together, to do that, to reach out into these spaces. Now, let me go back to the meeting. So, yeah, because listen, if white people want to help us build now, and the operative word is help, not lead. They can only help. If white people, if Hispanic people, if Hindus, whatever they are, if they want to help us to build, not lead, but if they want to help us to build, we welcome that help. We set the agenda, but if they want to help us, we welcome the help. So trust me, if you have people who are someone other than Black people who want to help Black people advance Black people's agenda, we welcome that help. We're not closed off to that. They just have to understand what it is, what the mission is. So it's not about us being anti anybody. We're not anti anybody else. What we are anti is we are anti the inequities. That's what we're anti in every sector, from education to economics. That is what we are anti. Anybody who is not supportive of that, we have to address. But we cannot address that with just a few folks. We cannot have the kinds of influence and advancement and impact if we do not bring ourselves together from those numbers that we have to build that kind of infrastructure. We will never do it. We will never do it. So that way, we will never do it that way. So the conversation that I had, and I gave them, it was just a very few minutes. She wanted me to come. So I gave them the elevator pitch of the presentation of what 10 by 10 to win is. And after I gave them the presentation, I believe that there was 3 There was 2 Hispanics, one and 2 whites, and 1 African American, 2 African American parents. That was what the group was. And everybody in the group, at least after that presentation, in fact, there was the one mother who was the mother of, I believe, a biracial child, who asked the most questions, who sounded the most interested. So my point is, again, we are not against anybody. We're not anti anybody. We're only anti inequities. We're anti policies that are antithetical to the advancement and the enrichment of the Black community. And we cannot afford to operate in silos. All right, we've got a few minutes left. I'll take your phone calls, 951-221-8221 if you'd like to call in. I will certainly take your calls. 951-221-8221. So be happy to take your calls. But now look, so with all that is going on, all that we talked about tonight, that we see that the muskrats are trying to do, we can push back on that. This Friday, please join us at this Thursday's meeting, because we're going to be talking about what we're going to be doing on Friday. We're also going to be talking about the election that has taken place out in Flossmoor, that we're supporting candidates out in Flossmoor, Illinois, which is about 15 minutes south of Chicago. Flossmoor is 100 years old. Flossmoor is 63% Black, 27% white, but it has a 100% white administration. And the Black residents of Flossmoor have realized that the old saying is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, the population changed, the demographics changed, but the power base hasn't changed. And a few things have taken place there where the Black community has voiced concerns, and those concerns were not heard because they went on and made decisions that were antithetical to their concerns. So now, what you have here is these are some action moments or action items that we have to deal with. And all of these, every single one of them that we can win. Look, in Flossmoor, all they need is 2,000 votes in Flossmoor. Flossmoor is about 10,000 members, 10,000 people. Again, there's 63% of Flossmoor is Black, 63%. So, so all they need is 2,000 votes in Flossmoor. We want to help them win. We want to help Joni Bradley Scott, who is a trustee, mother, wife, businesswoman. We want to help her win. There are other members there that are running for local offices in Flossmoor. We want to help them in order that there is more representation and the voices of the Black community that voice their concerns, that they're heard and that they're not just ignored. So it doesn't make any sense that you have a village that is 63% Black and there's not a single Black person in the administration. You have 3 Black members on the board, which is nothing more than window dressing, because you have 3 Black trustees and you have 3 white trustees. Well, the 3 white trustees vote whatever way that the mayor and the village manager wants for them to vote when it comes down to a policy. They voted with the village mayor to discard and to discharge the first African-American chief of police with no cause. They voted with the mayor to put a retention basin behind a school that is largely populated by Black children against the will of the community, largely the Black community. Madeline Miller was a African-American woman in Flossmoor who they said was having a mental breakdown and was shot and killed by the police. So they get rid of Jarrell Jones, the first Black chief there, against the will of the people. And then they create a position and bring in someone who did not have the credentials to be a police officer and created a position for them to be the director of a police force with no powers to be a police officer, who was just installed as the police officer because they just got their credentials. Now, let me say this. This is not about being against the person. This is about the process. This is about the process. And this happens in Flossmoor, it happens wherever. So even though that the person is a Black man, which I'm sorry that, and I happen to know the wife of that the now chief of police, and I wish that they had not allowed for themselves to be used in this situation, because that's in fact what it is. However, so they bring this person in against the will, again, of the people and the members and the Black members of the board. So the point that I'm making is that we have to stop allowing for ourselves to adjust to abnormalities as being normal. And we have to not allow for ourselves to fall into, these kumbaya moments. Because it's not a kumbaya moment. We have to call it what it is, and we have to deal with what it is. But we also have to be strategic in how we approach these things. And the best way for us to win and the best way for us to have a significant voice is to have significant numbers. We can put significant numbers up without uttering one word. If we were to put 100,000 or 200,000 of us together and not utter one word, that we now have a organized union of Black voters, and not utter a word, not utter one single solitary word, not a word, that will send a resounding force of power around the state of Illinois. Not only the state of Illinois, but it will have national implications. And I'll tell you why it'll have it. Because Black people have never, hear me out, Black people have never, we have never, ever been organized. Never. We have mobilized. We've done some mobilizing. We did mobilizing in the 60s. We've done mobilizing in the 50s. We mobilized around the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We mobilized around, 65. We mobilized around the Voting Rights Act of 1964. We mobilized around those things, not organized. We have organizations like Rainbow Push. We have organizations like the Urban League. We have organizations like the NAACP. We have organizations like National Action Network. But we have never institutionally organized ourselves politically to have a political body. Never. We mobilized to go and walk in commemoration of the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday at the Appomattox Bridge. Yeah, we mobilized to do that, but we have never structurally organized ourselves politically to move in the same direction to deal with a multiplicity of issues between education and economics. We've never done that. And what I am saying to us is, let's organize ourselves together and let us have our own voice for and by and of our communities, that we are able to make demands of the people who are in public office, and they have to respond to our demands and can no longer take us for granted. But that could only happen by us organizing together, not to build some sort of clubhouse, or not to put anybody on a pedestal, not to put me on a pedestal, not creating any opportunity politically for me. We create opportunity to have people to serve in a position so that they have the resources and they have the support from the voters to go to those chambers and to deliver and to advocate for the resources to come back to the region of our communities. That's the position that you and I must. We do not have the luxury. We don't have the luxury of individualism. We don't have the luxury of sitting on the sideline. All of this crazy, evil intent that they're doing on the federal level, we have got to fight it on the local level. We've got to tell our local General Assembly, they've got to tell us, what are you doing to protect the poor? What are you doing to protect Social Security? What are you doing to protect our veterans? What are you doing to protect our Department of Education? What are you doing? Not individually, but what are you doing as our representatives? We've got to put ourselves in a position to hold them accountable. And if they're not doing it, if they can't do it, then we've got to be in the position to say, we can choose other people to slate them for candidacy. We've got elections that are coming up. We've got elections that are coming. We need to gear up. We need not wait until election. We need not wait to 2027. We need to organize ourselves now so that we can be ready and deliberate and deliver in 27, in 26. All right, that's going to do it for me tonight. Thank you all for tuning in to the podcast right here on intellectualradio.com. I'm here every Monday night from 7 o'clock till 9. I'd like to see you all this Thursday at our 10 by 10 to win meeting. Please text 10X10 to the number 855-909-1385. Join us at 6:30 on Wednesday night. Invite someone else to come along with you. Listen to the presentation and let me know if you believe in it, if you will come and be a permanent part of organizing ourselves together to strengthen our community. Thank you all so much. Hey, thanks so much, Brother Earl Winfrey at intellectualradio.com.